This isn't the 1990s, per se. This isn't when things were relatively peaceful. We had Kosovo and we had some tragedies in Africa and Darfur. But generally speaking, once the wall fell, and the wall meaning the Berlin Wall in 91, and the Soviet Union collapsed, and there was no one else to stand up against the might, the economic and military might of the United States, we entered kind of like a relatively peaceful time. And we could also say that's been consistent really since the end of World War II. If we're just going to look back into history, into the beginning of the 20th century until now, right, 120-ish, 130 years, we had the First World War in 14 to 18, then we had the Second World War just a couple decades later. We had some craziness with the growth of fascism and racism and all these things in the 30s, which we've talked about numerous times on the show. Then we have World War II, obviously, 39 to 45, and then right after that, we have a little bit of the Korea 50-53. But that wasn't even really, that was kind of a police action in a lot of ways. And yes, there was conventional fighting going on, but really nothing like World War II. And we can complain about Vietnam being a catastrophe for the United States and for the Vietnamese people, even Cambodia, but nothing like a world war. And then what? We have the Cold War. But the Cold War wasn't hot in that way. We had a lot of spy activity, we had a lot of espionage, we had a lot of counterintelligence, we had all those stuff that you read about in books between us and the Russians and the KGB and the CIA and all those fun things. But again, nothing like we saw in the world wars. But these conflicts that are popping up today with a resurgent China that is now really finding its feet, and it has for a couple decades now, but really now becoming the second largest economy in the entire world, as we see continuously building up its military technology. They've already invested in a couple aircraft carriers. They want to be able to dominate the sea in the same way that the United States does, and Britain in a lot of ways. We see one country, some people call it European, but Russia invading Ukraine without any legal authority whatsoever, for reasons half of which are made up, and the other half are exaggerated, to a point where it's laughable. And then we're back in the Middle East as well, with an upheaval. Now, you can claim that that's really been the case for a long time now, but nonetheless, it's really been ratcheted up over the last decade, with Iran supporting multiple proxy elements, as we've discussed: Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iranian-aligned militia groups in Iraq, which have taken a stronghold since the end of the invasion, and the United States pulled out. And then the Houthis fighting a civil war down in Yemen, but now are focused mainly on attacking shipping in the Red Sea. So all of these things are happening. And again, we have some lesser issues down in Venezuela. If you live there, clearly it's not a lesser issue, but it is an issue. There's problems in South America with poverty, and Russia and China actually attempting to get more influence down there. So there really is a lot going on. And I first want to say, listen, I'm well aware, and I'm sure you are as well, well aware that we can all look at ourselves in our current time and say, yeah, we don't really know what we know, right? We don't really know what we think. We always think things are sideways. We always think things are bad, but if you look back into history and blah, blah, blah. So I want to acknowledge the fact that we can go back into history and say, yeah, but every time, every generation that's been around has been able to claim that things are really bad. Right? If you look at the Vietnam generation, you could say that the Vietnam and Korea generation, that communism is spreading everywhere, and the Soviet Union was way more powerful than Russia is today, and so there was really bad. And then we had the potential for nuclear catastrophe, even in 1962, which is sure that there's some reality there, but that doesn't take away from the destabilized environment that we have today. Right? And I'm not going to be in a place here where we're having any comparisons. I'm not going to say, oh boy, here we are. We're on the brink of World War III, and it's never been this bad since, Hiroshima. I'm not going to make that claim. However, I am going to say it is true that we are in an unstable environment. And whenever we find ourselves in one of these places, one of these time frames, there's always a potential for catastrophe. There's always a potential for something bad to happen because one side, one nation, one leader miscalculates and sends potentially even the world into a domino effect where everybody's fighting. Right?